I need a motion to open the meeting.
So move.
So move.
Who's taking you're taking a roll?
I
Sal?
am.
All right,
Yes.
call the roll, please.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Nora, you muted.
Yes.
Tafour,
Not here yet.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Next item is the adoption of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Okay, I just want to point out there's something on new business 2A is on for the regular meeting, and that is because it is very important to the legal situation between a village and Save the Sound. So I would just note that. That's the only item that's on for the regular meeting. Okay, call the roll.
Trustee Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Tafour, Mayor Murphy.
No. Okay, thank you all. We have two visitors tonight, who one is a village employee and one is a volunteer. So as is the want of the board, we're going to take those folks first. We're going to do the harbor master first. And Jeff, you're here to speak on which topic? Just remind me again. Okay, harbor isle items. Request for additional funds to complete dock replacement project and proposed fee for fishing charter. Oh,
Yes,
that's nice. So the floor is yours. This is item on the agenda 2G.
okay, so for the first one, the lumber for the dock rebuild, by the time we ordered it and by the time we received the shipment, the price increased of about $10,000 for the lumber. So I need additional funds because now I'm short to pay for the other materials that are just coming in now to finish up the dock build because of we ran over on the lumber. So that about sums that one up. And then the fishing charter is I have a charter boat company that's out of New Rochelle now, and they're looking for a new place to relocate. So I offered them our guest dock that we haven't used. It's not really a good guest dock for transients to use because they need a dinghy to come in and out of to that dock, which for him actually works out great because he doesn't want his boats near the other boats on the dock. So he's looking for something that kind of gets him away and off the dock where all the people are. So he was interested in that for the fee of $13,000 for the season for two boats. And then that would also bring in about additional 30 to 40 cars per day for each charter. He runs two charters a day. So they would pay additional parking, to the park.
What's the name of his boats?
Soundbound charters,
Okay, is that party boats or just charter?
just charter fishing. They don't do any kind of booze cruises or anything like that. They just fish.
Is it like the Shamrock or something like that? Is that the one?
It's along those lines. His names of his boats are Soundbound. That's the name of the boats.
Trustee Natchez has a question.
Mute.
Dan, you're muted. Trustee Natchez, you're muted. Dan, trustee Natchez, okay, there you go. Okay.
Okay. I don't know quite how that happened, but my question is, are you talking about the docks that are in the mooring field or the ones along the shore?
The ones that are, like right across from Nichols, they sit on the pilings there, on two pilings.
Okay,
In the West Basin across from Nichols, it would be the easiest way to describe it, would be that dock.
and where would they board?
He's going to run the boats over to the boat ramp and board there. His charter is leave at 8 o'clock in the morning and about 6 o'clock at night. So those two times of the day, he would run over, pick up his charter, his clients at the boat ramp.
Okay. Any other questions? I guess my question is this, is this, all right, I grew up going to Sheep's Head Bay and going to the party boats there. So you just showed up that day. If you had your $20, you got on a boat and you fished. Is that what this is, or is it, I'm calling up and I'm reserving?
He has him book with him for the day so that he kind of knows who's coming, because he tries to coordinate, because he runs 2 boats. He can't make sure that he has 100 people show up and then he can't fit them. So
Okay.
they book through him, and then so he regulates who's getting on what boat.
Okay, trustee Natchez again.
You say he's relocating from New Rochelle. Why is he not staying in New Rochelle?
He's out at Dudley's now. He runs out of a private marina there at Dudley's where the restaurant is. And there's some new owners there, and they're not going to open the docks this year. So I'm actually kind of competing with the city of New Rochelle, because the city of New Rochelle is trying to get him to go there to them because of the revenue that he brings in with the parking and that stuff. So, I mean, he may very well, if this doesn't get approved, then he'll probably go to the New Rochelle Marina. And I'm trying to compete with them a little bit to bring in some revenue.
So what did you say it would be, 13,000?
Yeah.
13,000 for the docks, and then whatever parking, he brings in.
And we have ample parking, right?
Yes.
Well, I say from my point of view, and is, I would definitely appreciate the revenue. And this is something that I would definitely use, because I've gone out on these more than a few times with my sons, and I look forward to doing it. I would do it by myself. Yeah, trustee Natchez.
I don't have any problems with it, but I would want to make sure that we have proper insurance.
Right.
That, totally covers us. And I don't know if there's a way, but I think we need to regulate that there can be no drinking or carrying of booze to or from the boat. I don't think we can regulate what goes on in the boat, but we can say that you can't bring, alcohol or whatever. Because once they're in the park and they have that, it's very hard to police.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the only way you could drink in the park is with permission of the board of trustees.
This is
Go ahead, Victor.
just a quick question. Anything for residents? Same price for non-residents and non-resident?
Where is Victor?
I
I'm
don't know.
commuting. I'll put my video when I as soon as I land on my computer. I'm still commuting, Mayor. I'm sorry, but I'll be joining you live soon. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Can you?
So his question is there a different, is there a discount for residents? But this isn't a village-run program, right?
Right, it's not a village-run program now, but he was very willing to do something for the day camp, for the village day camp, if the village wanted, to do like a day fishing trip for the camp, because he's done that in the past for New Rochelle, right? And to do stuff with Kyle, if Kyle wanted to, go out for a day and fish to get stuff for her tanks, he's more than willing to do stuff like that, because he was on the website and he actually called me about that today. So, but as far as, I'll have to ask him if there's a discount for the residents. I did not ask him about that.
Thank you. But thank you, actually, thank you for answering that larger issue of the, opportunity. So thank you. I think that's the idea. Thank you for keeping that in the loop.
Yeah.
Suggest, don't demand.
Okay.
Would you
Don't
have any-
insist.
Who's
Mayor,
that? That's Jerry. Oh, Jerry's
it's
on-
mention it, don't insist.
Jerry and I are quoting our favorite movie, The Godfather. All right, is that all you have for us tonight, Jeff?
Yes, that's it from me.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Any
One question real quick.
Yeah.
The $10,000 price tag was on a bill of how much for the lumber, Jeff?
The final bill, the original quote was 19,000. It came in at 29. Was the final bill once it was delivered.
Wow.
Housing starts.
No, I get it. Yeah, no, I was just curious, that's all.
All right,
Mayor,
Yeah,
would you
thank you.
like these items on the next meeting?
Yeah, and it's fine with me. Is everybody fine putting this on for the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I know the charter boat guy was kind of in a rush, not a rush, but just kind of needed an answer because if this doesn't go through, he's got to find another spot.
You can tell him that he should, that it was looked upon favorably, and by favorably means we put it on for a regular meeting.
Okay, very good.
Tell him not to demand.
Please,
Thank you, Jeff.
please don't demand.
Okay, we have many members of
Thank you,
our
everybody.
RAC Committee for the Environment. And they were talking about this a while back when I was their liaison, and there was not enough time to do it last year. And this has been something that they've been advocating for a long time. This is the stretch code. So would you like to just give us a summary of it?
Sure.
Liam,
Yeah. Okay. So
you lead the charge tonight?
I will. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the stretch code is the village would adopt it as a extension of its building code. So essentially, it's a requirement that the building code is the buildings are a little bit more efficient. So it covers things like the building envelope, reducing the operational costs, sort of just it's it's probably more technical than I could explain to you, but the idea is that you would adopt it and that it would lead to more efficient buildings as you move forward, energy efficient. One of the points about it is that, periodically the building code becomes more efficient. So what the stretch code is basically where the building code will be in a few years' time anyway. So you're just sort of getting ahead of the curve. It's been adopted by a number of other municipalities around Westchester, starting off with Hastings on Hudson. I think they were the first ones. And we have New Rochelle, and I think the town of Mamaroneck have adopted it. So the Committee of the Environment sort of believes that this would be a prudent thing for the village to do. There was a couple of weeks ago, a Sustainable Westchester had a sort of a session on this for municipalities. I think the mayor of New Rochelle was saying that, people are quite attracted to the idea that the city of New Rochelle is adopting this, and he said it was like almost like a marketing point for the city. So one of the issues that comes up is people have is what does it add to the cost of a building? So NYSERDA has done some analysis of this. So for example, they said you might add $1,500 to $2,500 to the cost of the construction of a single family home, but that would result in an almost 20% reduction in energy use compared to homes built on the existing code. And the payback on the investment would probably be average around 6.4 years. So there is obviously a little bit more of an upfront cost, but it doesn't take long to pay it back. And one of the other advantages they stressed was, if you're building a place to rent out, then the renter is a primary beneficiary of this because they end up paying less in energy bills. So that's a good positive consideration to come from it. Okay, so has anyone got sort of any questions then, I guess?
I guess my main concern, this will help us with our rating, right?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, it is a, when you say a rating for the Climate Smart Communities program?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, it will. Yeah, you get points for that. And I think if you, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, if we adopt it by June, we might be eligible for a grant of $5,000. Is that?
Yes.
That's what I recall.
That is correct. That we would be eligible. There's 78 of those grants remaining. So if we would act in time, we would be eligible for a $5,000, it's called Action Grant. But then, we're sort of working two programs at once. I think everybody's aware that there's the clean energy communities, and then there's the climate smart communities, all with the same goal of having New York State meet its carbon reduction goals. But if we pass this, we also get points in the climate smart communities. And I believe that would bring us up to sort of a 3,000 point threshold, which would give us a $10,000 grant in addition to this. I just want to add on to what Liam said. First of all, I do think that we really need the buy-in of the building department. I think that's key to the whole thing. But, across Westchester, buildings account for 1/3 of all carbon emissions. So, a lot of what we've been doing is more residential based, but I think it's too big of a category to ignore. And as Liam said, these are these codes, what's in these codes, things like insulation and using Energy Star, equipment, things like that. These are things that will just probably be required in a few years. So it really gives the building department more time to get used to the code and work with it. So it's coming. It's just this is getting sort of a jump start on it. And I will reiterate that the mayor of New Rochelle was all positive. And obviously we know that is a town, city, whatever, that does a lot of building. And he felt that it really made New Rochelle, more attractive to mission-based investors. He felt that improved market values overall. And they weren't experiencing any obstacles with having this in place. And the town has it as well. So we could always consult with them. And I think that builders that build, one last point, that builders that build in the village versus the town, there's so much confusion that it just makes sense to have a consistent code across the village and the town.
This would apply to all new construction, but would it also affect renovation?
Yes, it would.
Is there a threshold for renovation? I don't remember seeing that.
Is there what?
Well, usually different codes, get activated at a threshold of you're spending so much in renovation, then you have to do this.
Oh.
Like, it's not if you're changing a ceiling fan, you have to do that.
Yeah, I don't have that answer, Tom, but yes, I'm sure there's some sort of threshold. We could find out for you.
Okay. Dan Natchez?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the building department and their analysis of what the real changes are. I'm all for, clean energy. I'm all for, moving forward on these types of things. But I'm concerned that if somebody's doing a small renovation, to find out that they have to spend a significant amount more for the rest of the house as opposed to what they are trying to do. I don't want that to be an impediment to improve homes. So I'd like to try and get a little better feel, from the building department as to the nuances of this and what affects and how it affects it.
And I agree with Dan, but I also think that we should have a legal department take a look at this to make sure that it would fit in nicely with our code, or if they, any problems that they may foresee. But I think it's something that we should move forward on after due diligence.
Can we do due diligence in 2 weeks?
I don't know. Let's see let's come back to this in 2 weeks and see where we are. Bob, can you review this?
We can review this. I've actually just, while you're talking, pulled up the adoption guide and pulled up what the town of Mamaroneck did, and we can certainly review this. I just have two concerns. First of all, that to say that anything would fit in with the mishmash that is our building code is not something I'll ever say, because it won't without your taking a serious look at the whole code. That's number one. My concern about this is, and I don't know enough about the technical aspects of this, but I would just be concerned, and maybe the building department can address this as trustee Natchez has suggested. Just got to make sure the building department has the capacity in terms of training and in terms of whatever equipment they need to be able to monitor compliance. It's just on a really quick look, it looks very technical. And I'm not, and may require specific equipment and certainly more time and training to enforce this. Just want to make sure they have the capacity to do this, because the place we don't want to be is in a position where you adopt the law and expect compliance, and then we can't say, the staff can't say, we can enforce it.
Fair enough. So let's send this to the building department. I'm sorry, Nora, go ahead.
It's unclear to me about whether this is a public hearing or just a resolution.
No, this is the adoption of a local law, Nora. This is a regular and seeker.
There's some documentation that says it's just by resolution, but it's a local law. Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks.
That's it, changing our code, yeah. All right, so we'll have the building department take a look at it. Jerry, can you see to that, please?
Yes, of course.
And our crack legal team will investigate it, and we'll be back in 2 weeks to see where we are with it.
Back here or back on the regular agenda?
But we can't put on a regular agenda until we get an opinion from the building department and the.
So, to that end, I had suggested to the building department they contact the building department in Hastings on Hudson. You know, they'd obviously adopted it, but they've also done quite a bit of work sort of preparing a sort of worksheets for their inspectors to use to apply this. So I guess my point is that, you know, this has been adopted in a number of other places, so a lot of this work's been done. And also the other thing that I had suggested was that there was someone, actually a contractor who works with NYSERDA, who would be willing to come and speak to the Board of Trustees. And I can facilitate that if you would be interested in having him come, and he can obviously answer more specific questions. I believe to the point of, you know, what is the workload required to enforce this? I believe that a lot of the energy sort of analysis stuff can be done by sort of another party and not necessarily a sort of contractor too, but I'm not, it's a technical thing that I'm not necessarily aware of, but that would be something that I would suggest you look into. And then to Trustee Natchez's point, I'm actually putting an extension on my house. My architect got confused, thought I was in the town, so applied the stretch code. So it only, so from my point of view, what's happened was he just said, okay, well, you need to buy more. We just need to buy these windows instead of these ones. So, you know, the increased cost for that small extension was a few $100s. So if you're talking about a renovation, I think you could think of it as sort of proportional. If you're doing a, you know, a renovation that is most of the house, then you're probably going to get close to that $1,500 to $2,500 range that I said originally. And otherwise, in my case, it's a lot less.
Okay, thank you, Liam. So,
Tom?
Yeah.
Good for Liam. In the worksheets that there are worksheet that compares the existing state building code and, you know, the improvements that would have to be made under this code, i.e. a comparison as opposed to just what they have to do to enforce it.
Well, yeah, NYSERDA, who sort of the state agency running this, they have quite a lot of documentation. I mean, it's very, at some point it's very technical, right? It's lighting, electrical energy monitoring, insulation values, and things like that. So, that's something that the building department would probably have to advise you on.
No, what I was
guess
trying to
my
get to,
general sense is, a lot of other municipalities have adopted this, and in their experiences, it's reasonably seamless.
I'm appreciative of that. I was just hoping that if there was a worksheet that says instead of a R12, you need R or something like that, that it was a quick comparison on the different issues, it would help speed up the review for the building department and definitely ease trying to get to implementation of this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, NYSERDA have a complete adoption guide, right? Which I will, I'll send to the board.
I would suggest you send it to Jerry as the village manager, and he'll distribute it to where it needs to go.
Okay, I'll send it to Jerry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liam.
Thank you.
So just while we're talking about that, would you like the person from NYSERDA to address your meeting next?
No, not yet. Let's
Okay.
just see what we get back from,
Why not?
because we're going to have a report from the village manager and a report from the building
Well,
department.
we can all talk at once then.
All right, then, okay, yeah.
I think we keep moving along.
Can I ask a question? Maybe it would be more beneficial for Jerry or someone else in the building department to talk to the person that Liam was talking about. I mean, they're going to have more technical questions than we're going to have.
I think that's a good point. Liam, why don't you have that person talk to Jerry, and Jerry will get that person in touch with Frank.
Is that okay, Jerry?
Sure, of course.
Because that'll just be a rabbit hole.
We'll talk together. When I'm up in the building department, Frank and I will talk to the NYSERDA. You're talking about the person from NYSERDA, right?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Yeah, okay, sure.
He's actually a contractor who works on behalf of NYSERDA.
No problem.
Yep. Okay.
No issue.
So when I send that information to you, Jerry, I'll include his contact.
Very good. Thanks,
I
Liam.
wouldn't mind hearing from him.
All right.
Thank you.
We're going back to our regular agenda.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you.
The next item is well, the municipal,
Oh,
What?
Thank you.
the community solar program.
They're on?
oh, okay.
Oh, crap. Where are they? On the agenda.
The next item.
Oh, slice.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Where is it?
Municipal, it's the next item, municipal electric generation and solar arrays.
Okay, and who's on?
Committee for the environment.
Okay, municipal electric generation and solar arrays from the Committee for the Environment. Would you somebody like to lead this?
Well, this was my initiative.
Oh, okay, it's not, okay.
All right.
All right,
And we did discuss it in the last Environment Commission meeting.
okay, then it'll get called at a regular time.
Okay, great.
Okay. Going back to the regular business.
So that's not being discussed now?
No, it's not gonna be discussed.
Would you like us to?
No,
Okay.
because we gotta get to the stuff that's on here.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna sign off. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Item 1A, moving village elections to match federal election cycles. This was talked about by the young members of the Okra program. This would move all village elections to the even numbered years, which would match the federal elections. This would provide for longer terms for the trustees. I believe that they had the mayor run every 2 years. And, it would provide for greater voter turnout and greater voter participation along a socioeconomic and racially more diverse path. I know that Trustee Young wanted to talk about this, is his issue, so I'll let him Lou?
Well, yeah, since it seems like we can't do referendum because of the quirks of the state law, this is something that we'll either have to decide to do or not do ourselves. So I strongly believe it simplifies the elections for our citizens. And I have gotten very little negative feedback. And even today, I was talking to somebody who said, "You have elections every year?" Yeah, I think it makes sense, to keep it simple for people. They vote on a number of things at the same time, and I would like to see where we stand on it and see if we can get 3 votes to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to at least bring to a public hearing, because it would have to be a public hearing to make the change, and people can weigh it at a public hearing. Colleagues?
I've thought a lot about this, and I've worked with the students on this quite a bit. It really won't, it doesn't mean we won't have an election every year. It means the village of Mamaroneck won't have candidates running every year, but we still have in the odd years or the off years, the respective towns, the town of Rye and the town of Mamaroneck, and our county legislator and our county executive. And so the county executive runs every 2 years, county legislator every 4 years. So I am concerned that just on changing it, this is a lot to unpack. And the proposal is moving to 4-year terms for trustees, maybe a 4-year term for the mayor, maybe not a 4-year term for the mayor. And also changing our election cycle from 3 trustees running on the even years and the mayor and 1 trustee running on the odd years to the mayor and 1 trustee running on an even year and 3 trustees running on an even year, but alternating cycles, so it's 4-year terms. And so I'm concerned that we're disassociating ourselves with the county with whom we work closely. And I would, I think we have to, the county, I think the elected officials in the county rely on us to help get the vote out. So I think we have to think long and hard about whether we want to sever that connection. And so I think that's something that we just haven't considered. I think a referendum is really important. We discussed this last year and decided not to do it. I think if we're at all considering this, there need to be term limits. I mean, I think there need to be term limits that maybe if we're going to do a 4-year cycle, the 4-year cycle should be on the off year, which I know doesn't have the same voter turnout. We do get a bigger voter turnout in presidential years, and it's sort of ranked. Presidential year is the top, then the congressional or gubernatorial year is next. Then we have the year the county executive runs, and then we have the year, which is the year that mayor and trustee run, and then we have the year that only the county legislator runs. And so there's really 4 different elections. High turnout in the even years, less high turnout in the other years, but they're not that disparate. And in 2020, we had a massive turnout. We also had, and I think this is like, I don't think the only way to increase voter turnout is by moving to an even year election, but we had over 2,200 absentee ballots cast in Mamaroneck in 2020. And I think we had something like 648 in the previous presidential cycle. And that was because it was easy to vote absentee. Everybody got a ballot in the mail, you didn't have to do the application process. Everybody got a ballot in the mail, and you didn't have to be out of town that day or be disabled. So, I mean, I do think that there's many strategies for turning out the vote. And I'm not sure, given our circumstance of running, we're going to have an election in the village every year anyway. I mean, we're going to need to vote. So it's not any easier for the voters. We'll just have maybe lower turnout for the county and the town races. And I don't know. I don't think we've considered that impact. So and I'm also still not convinced. While personally, it'd be much more convenient to run every 4 years. No, no doubt about it. I'm not sure that that's a good idea, because I think every 2 years makes us really more accountable to the voters. And we're not running for our convenience. We're running because we're here to serve the voters or the residents, not necessarily the voters, all the residents. So I think there's a lot to discuss. And I
That'll be
think
in a public hearing, right?
Anybody else? Dan?
I think Nora has made some very valid points.
So do we discuss that in a public hearing, or are we just going to kill it here?
Well, I don't know what the public hearing would be about. Is it about 4-year terms for everybody? Is it about 4-year terms for trustees and a 2-year term for mayor, which I don't quite understand that.
It would be about changing it.
What? No, I mean, in order to have a public hearing, we actually have to draft a law. So we have to figure out what we want. Do we want to go to a 4-year cycle? Do we want to go to a 4-year cycle for the trustees and not for the mayor? Do we want to go to a 4-year cycle on odd years where all the other local elections are held, where, Rye, up and down the road, it's the town of Mamaroneck, the village of Larchmont, the town of Mamaroneck, the city of Rye, and the town of Rye. So we're going to have, and the county. So the county board of elections is still going to be holding elections in the village, and we're still going to need to come out to vote for the town and the county.
What do you want to do?
We have term limits. I mean, there's like a lot. It's not just.
Hold on.
What do you want to do?
I mean, Nora, term limits isn't on the table here. I mean, that might be a very valid, let me just finish, please. That might be a very valid issue to put in, but that is not what we're discussing here tonight. That would be a discussion for another time. The idea that we need to stay in sync with the county is talking about now moving to the even numbered years.
Yeah.
I think, the county will take care of the county. And, we had a county election last year where nobody ran against our county legislator, and I'm happy about that for her. But it isn't like these are getting to be hotly contested elections anymore. If we keep it every 2 years, we're solidifying the idea that there's always going to be low voter turnout in the mayoral years, which, is fine, but but I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not going to be around forever. But I would prefer if the mayor ran every 2 years, 2 trustees ran every 2 years and 4-year cycles, so that every 2 years, there'd be like in the town, every 2 years the supervisor runs, and she runs or he runs with an array of different council members, because they're running on 4-year terms, but they're just doing it on the odd numbered years. And and I had served in the town and ran in the town on multiple occasions, unopposed. And I don't think that that's particularly good. So there isn't a lot of activity outside of the village of Mamaroneck in these off years that we really have to be worried about. And I don't know why our calculus has to be about the turnout for the county executive's race. I mean, that's a political calculation. That's not a governmental calculation. I mean, the idea here is that we're trying to bring out more voters to participate in our local process. And, that really is in sum and substance, I think, what the youngsters were pushing forward, and, what is on the table here today. So, I also do think that, term limits have their place, possibly. I think that also people in these offices should have self-control and limit themselves and know when curtains coming down. I always like Mary Tyler Moore went out at number 1. It's better to leave than to be kicked out. So, I mean, I just, let's just focus on what this is. This is just about our elections and how it affects all voters here who, who vote for mayor and trustee.
Well, I would say that while I think it's an interesting idea to have to do it in the rhythm that the town does it, with two trustees running every 2 years and the mayor running all of those, two trustees running
Mayor running every 2 years.
every 4 years, and if we're gonna do it that way, I'm not sure. I mean, the town supervisor has a bit of a different role than the mayor does. I'm not sure that 4 years is, and I'm not sure a 2-year term is required for the mayor. I think it could be a 4-year term, but if we're in for a penny, in for a pound. But that bifurcating of switching out the races to, like, 1 year we have 3 trustees, it's how we do it now, and then 1 trustee and the mayor, that's not on the table either. That's not one of the 2 proposals. So I'm not interested in expanding terms unless we couple it with term limits. And I think, the students have given us some suggestions about what to do. They've given us 2 proposals. If we're limiting ourselves to those 2 proposals, then we are not considering a situation where trustees run in pairs always with the mayor.
But that's something that
We can do that, though,
that's
right?
something that we can do. And
We could do term limits too. I mean, we could consider term limits at the same time too.
Sure.
well, we could make announcements that we're limiting ourselves too. I mean, George Latimer did that.
Well, George Latimer, but the law was changed to do that.
I don't know any small municipality that has term limits. There's the other argument too, is that term limits are enforced by the voters. And that if we had the 2-year term limits in 1940, we wouldn't have had Franklin Roosevelt during World War II. So nature has a way of giving us what we need. So I'm just concerned about talking about an issue and then complicating it with another issue. And
what do we? So I guess, man.
Yeah, sure.
I guess the question is, what do we want to do about this idea of syncing up our elections to the federal cycle? Do we like it or do we not? And do we want to consider it? And we can tinker with it all we want. That's the question here. Or do we like? Do some of us like it the way it is now? I'd like to change it.
I would say that 4 of the members of the board a year ago decided not to do it. So it's, I'm interested in hearing people's evolution about why they've changed their mind.
Well, I can tell you why I've changed my mind, because I think that it's the kids brought back better research. I think that it's just an arduous task in the village of Mamaroneck to constantly have this division every year, and it's just it would still be plenty of democracy all around. There'd be more people participating, and the people who are now sitting it out are people who need the government most in a lot of ways, people who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and people who are racially diverse. They are the folks that we're not getting in the odd numbered years. And Nora, you and I have been doing this a long time, and we have tried to increase voter turnout in these odd numbered years, and we've only been successful at the margins. I can pretty much tell you, how many people are going to come out and vote in this election or that election and be within a couple of hundred votes. And just to clarify something also, in 2022, the amount of absentee ballots was because of COVID and the lessening of restrictions on how you can get an absentee ballot. They're not going to be 2,200 absentee ballots this year.
Tom, what I said is because the New York State mailed an absentee ballot, and New York State made absentee voting easier.
Yeah, because of COVID.
it's because of COVID, but they also changed the regulations so that you didn't have to swear that you were out of the county. And that referendum didn't pass last year. And that's really unfortunate. We could make one of the, there are a lot of strategies to increase minority turnout. None of those strategies ever say take a year off from voting. So, so I think that it's apples to apples. And I don't think we can feel good about saying we've increased the turnout of underrepresented populations simply by moving elections to the years that more people vote. There's always, there's a dropout for, always a drop down with the local races. So when there's a higher turnout for the governor or for the president than there ever is in our local races. There's a big turnout there. So I think there are a lot of other things we should be doing to increase, interest in elections and increasing local elections.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the concept of syncing up our elections with the federal cycle, and we hash out the subsequent details of our elections as we discuss that. That's my motion.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so let's take a vote.
Sally,
Trustee, I'm here. Sorry, Mayor. Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
No,
Lucas,
No, I don't think it's that simple.
It's no.
Tafour,
No.
There you go,
Mayor
we're done.
Murphy.
aye. Okay, thank you. Village trustee liaison to village justice. Ludus was you too.
All right, this goes back to my January, and Victor and I talked about it last couple of meetings ago, where I went down for the traditional, hi, here's the courts. And I was like, I thought it was an Appalachia. I was shocked at the condition over there. And I thought we didn't know about it. Turns out we did know about it. I didn't realize that. I thought they would need a liaison with the board to go over and just check on them and see how things are going. They're a co-equal branch of government. They don't feel comfortable coming and kind of asking us for things. I don't think it's a bad idea that if one of us were designated a liaison to check in with them on a regular basis, maybe in a rotating schedule, that it would help with the communication a little bit. But that's my idea. It doesn't have to. It's a little less urgent than I thought it was, since apparently we were aware of the mess across the street, and I didn't realize we were. All right. So that's what that is.
Okay, we just to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
We voted recently Jerry took emergency action.
Yes.
And just for the public.
Go.
To rectify a lot of the building deficiencies that were apparent and some that weren't apparent, and we are currently working upon that, and hopefully the work conditions over there will become tolerable. It's a shame that has gone on for, I don't know, I would say that building has been deteriorating for 50 years without getting the proper attention. And we are the board that it fell upon to then do the work necessary to improve the building condition. Just for folks at home, Old Village Hall we're talking about, this is on Mount Pleasant and Prospect, right over here. Next, across the street from the parking area where the police department is and where the court is. It's called Old Village Hall. That was not designed as a village hall. It was not built as a village hall. It was built as St. Michael's home for wayward girls back in the day. And we have been repurposing that building to try and make it something it was never intended to be. We have a police station there. We have a court that's been added on there. We have our building department there. We have a detective bureau there. We have an inadequate jail there. So we are trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, as they used to say. But we're working on it, and hopefully it'll be better for the community in the coming months. I just want to bring the community up to date on that.
To the point of this, what we were talking about, does the board feel a liaison with our two justices would be in order?
For me personally, I'd be afraid of, one branch of government bleeding into the other. I think that they are, pretty vocal about what they need and what they want. So I personally would not be in favor of it.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Tom, I agree. I think they're their own branch and that it wouldn't really be appropriate. It's not like a board or committee where they need someone to bring things back. If they need something, they really can get in touch with Jerry or us directly, and they do.
I understand that. My feeling was that we control their purse strings, their budget, so we might want to know the condition of their working conditions, which were horrible. I didn't realize we were aware that they had horrible working conditions already. So that's something I learned.
Okay.
Subsequently.
But thank you for caring about them and taking action. I appreciate it. Item 1C, enforcement of multiple dwelling law. Jerry, you on?
I think we talked about this last meeting. We're going to try and
Yeah.
get an update by the second meeting in April.
That's right. Next time, just put that next to it.
Okay.
Rental registration program.
Mayor, I had a meeting earlier with the village attorneys and late last week, and they need a little bit more time to do their review and go over it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just to be clear on that, an email to everybody, but directed to the attorney regarding the existing code. And I'm still waiting for an answer on that, and I'd like that at the same time.
We're working on that.
That's what they're working on.
Thank you.
Item 2E, zoning strategies to support all affordable housing development comprehensive plan.
1E, that's 1E.
Oh, 1E, I'm sorry, my mistake.
And Neil Desai.
Neil Desai, you want to lead us in that, Dan?
No, I will promote him.
Neil is on?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's an attendee.
Yeah, I just promoted him to a panelist. So he should be joining us shortly.
Or is that on? Okay.
Great.
When Neil's not on, we'll get back.
No, he is.
He's there.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, hi, Neil.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing cold. I hope you're all doing well. Yeah, so I went through the comp plan, which was in 2020. The latest version of the comp plan is the third draft, and I have this attached to the memo I sent, and that was November 2nd, 2020. And we were almost there. We're almost to the end zone with this. I think the one thing that we needed to do was, as the first part of the memo, on the first page of the memo, item number 3 there, where we left off and where we are now. We put this on hold due to COVID. The draft was never made public, but it does incorporate the comments by the BOT, land use boards, committees, and in the attachment, this third draft of the full plan in red text typeface. If you're going through that in red typeface is everything that's been modified based on all those comments. Now there is also a table that goes along with that, and that's what I've done for the previous 2 drafts was to have a table that shows you the page number and who made the comment, and that sort of thing. So, we kept close track of all the comments, but here we are now. I think I was at the last work session we had. Sarah Brown and I were both here, and we were glad to see you wanted to continue the comprehensive plan update process. And I think the one thing I want to preface about the comp plan is my approach to comp plans is, well, they are comprehensive. They do incorporate a lot of aspects of town. A lot of the things we just heard about the building, the stretch code, and these are all aspects that are would be covered in the comprehensive plan. But at the same time, I tried to balance the comprehensive plan from being too much of a compendium of facts with the need to provide strategy for the next 5 years. So when I went through each chapter, I kind of, I took that viewpoint. I do want to make sure that the content of the plan is accurate in terms of reflecting what's happened. And I know a lot of things have happened since 2020. Actions have been taken by the committees even during COVID, and of course, beyond COVID, there's Hurricane Ida. And so for each chapter, in my memo, I just kind of provide a summary of what I believe needs to be updated within each of those. As far as the second chapter, which is really the summary of the public engagement we had so far, there is some public engagement things, just basic updating people on the process, communicating what the next steps are, or any other topics. And, I make a few suggestions for how, we could involve general public in this kind of next phase of completing this update. And that's something I'd want to hear from you about some of those ideas. But for each chapter, I provided just a brief summary of just the things I believe need to be updated. And I think, of course, one of the things is in the land use and development chapter. I think that's where the tie-in is with zoning strategies for affordable housing. And so certainly that's an important element we'd want to include in that chapter. And so we provided a budget and a timeline for that in the memo. We estimate it could take about probably at a minimum of 4 months to update the draft, followed by 2 months for the review process, public adoption. And with respect to the zoning strategies of affordable housing, I put a note in here saying before we, it took a little bit of time to kind of digest all the things we'd done since 2017 on this project. And so I did want to get a chance to, I think to hear a little bit more BOT about their thinking on zoning strategies and the specifics of it before I provide a more detailed proposal like I did with the comprehensive plan update. So I think, I think most of you are all familiar with the document. The third draft is something you might not have seen ever, but it's represents the update of the second draft, which was June 6, 2020, which you all reviewed. And I think, yeah, so that's my summary of the memo. And there is another memo in there from my NV5 days, which provides some background, because in 2017, I wanted to mention that the emphasis of the plan was to be on looking at sustainability and residential neighborhood character. And so you'll see that in the current draft, there's a lot of attention in those two sections. But I think one important thing is, given COVID and Hurricane Ida, how much how do the priorities shift a bit in how the comprehensive plan has taken shape so far? So, so yeah, happy to discuss.
Any questions from the board about Mr. Desai's?
Terrific report.
Okay.
I think we're so close. I really, I think we should, I think we need to finish the comp plan. And I'm wondering if 2 items down, the moratorium for C1 and C2 is something that would fold in neatly into the comp plan. It's the same. I mean, it's,
Well, let's take one item at a time. Because I want to talk about that separately. Is everybody okay with putting this on in 2 weeks?
I do have a question for Neil. I actually think we were even closer. I was surprised to see how, probably you think, how far, because we were even at the point of implementation. We were already reading how to do it. We had already received input for where we were. I know if we reopen things and just by updating it, it will require the round of putting things up to date in various ways, and also, of course, public input. But I thought, isn't there opening up things that we already had closed? I think, couldn't you review that on that end? I think it should be too lengthy now. It would be too much to get into the weeds. But I was a little surprised to see kind of the bulk of work and to be honest, the cost. I thought it was going to be a piece of that. So maybe there is, but that's my sense of where we were. I think we were really, really close. I was expecting something more focused, but that's really my comment. Otherwise, I would have to get too much in the weeds, and I want to either negotiate or, of course,
Neil,
my role.
Neil, can you address those?
Any
concerns?
comment on that?
Neil, can you
Well,
address those concerns?
Yeah, in the back of my mind when I was doing this, I thought that might be a comment that might come up, and it's it's a legitimate comment that you make. Can this thing? We've gone so far in this process. Do you think that we can, really kind of hone in and focus it and make it kind of simpler and more compact, and that would mean a lower budget. I think. When I was looking at all aspects of the chapter, I think that, there's a lot of, I think if you start going through each section of the thing, you'll see things that the way we talked about things about COVID in the beginning, there's a lot that needs to be changed because COVID has happened. I think when this was written in 2020, we're in the thick of things and still trying to figure things out, whether it's how businesses operate. And so there's starting with even just the beginning chapters, there's a lot of language in there that would be, at this point, it's not obsolete, but it needs to be kind of brought a step forward. And I think in each chapter, I tried to stay in touch with what things have been happening in Mamaroneck, by looking at the agendas, just so I can, have my pulse on what's happening. And there's a wetlands law update, there's buffers, I think there was a politician who suggested wanted to see Mamaroneck Avenue in downtown have some sort of bike lane treatment between, that sort of thing. And I think there's a lot of significant change that has happened, but this is just from my eyes, that we'd want it would reflect in the comprehensive plan. It would need to be reflected in the comprehensive plan more.
Actually, to finish, because maybe others want to follow on this topic, that's really my concern, that I think you're opening up too many issues. We had so many updates and improvements over a plan that is 10 years old and actually started in 2008. So it's almost 50. It's really, and by opening so much, this 6 months is going to turn into another year or two. And I think that's really where we have to narrow it and scope it down, because all these issues are legit. And the more we talk, and they're all interesting, but we really have done 90 something as the paying of the other consultant firm shows, 99% of that work. So it all depends on how much we open up here. And then there could be opportunities to do other processes, as some have been mentioned, even on affordable housing, but narrow it so we can finish this now. That's really my concern, and I leave it to others. I'd
I would-
favor looking at a revised, narrower scope.
I'll just add, I see, I think, I see what you're saying, Victor, and I would, I think I can certainly do that. I think you're right in that respect that, you know, there's enough in there that we can move along with things that we want to do next, particularly with the housing. And maybe since, you know, maybe we accept certain parts of it as, you know, for example, in the sustainability section, I'm sure you know, I think you started doing residential composting pickup, which I think is one of the recommendations in the plan. And we can just be like, well, that's been implemented, and just accept the fact that, you know, and not accepting it, but like, you know, in a way you can, you know, it's reflected in the comp plan and it has been implemented. And so in that respect, you know, the comp plan is not necessarily outdated. It's just, you know, actions have been taken on some of these recommendations that have already been implemented. And so, you know, do you need to spend time, you know, going through this entire proposal and opening it up? And I do see the 4 month I said at a minimum it would take, and I could imagine if, depending on how we play it out, it could go longer if we so-called open it up as Victor has said.
Anybody else?
So Neil, what do you think can be done in the way of narrowing it and moving it faster? Is that a reasonable thing? Is it really just not necessarily going through the discussions, but more to the recommendations in the recording, it's in that end of it?
I think it's I think I'd want to hone in more on the affordable housing section, which is in the land use and development chapter. If we, I'm thinking in terms of what is there content in the comprehensive plan that is not there or that needs to be fleshed out in order for the village to do certain important things that it needs to move forward with. And so I think there could be some more, I think maybe maybe focusing in on some of the chapters. Maybe, you know, look at 2 or 3 of the chapters, certainly land use and development, which would be where affordable housing would go. And I think that's the one key chapter I think we need to focus on. I think that approach might work if we kind of hone in on maybe 2 or 3 chapters that are really important to focus on, to move to update and to kind of put in any from a recommendations perspective, and then move from that.
And would it be reasonable to ask you to try and come back with a more refined proposal and see where we go from there?
Yeah, I think the one thing I think my initial thinking is land use and development, residential neighborhoods, and
yeah, I'm not sure we can decide that tonight. I think that's what we're asking you to do is
sure.
I want to do it on the fly, and I want, you know, you're a very thoughtful and an insightful person who does this as a professional.
Neil.
And I think the question is there a way of honing in on things very quickly and moving it forward on a faster track without getting into the weeds,
right.
To quote you, but getting into more of the, if we need to tweak some of the substantive things, whether it's land use or other things, I'd like to see a proposal from you to do that in the shorter timetable.
Neil, can you come back to us in 2 weeks? You can leave this proposal on the table, give us a truncated proposal in 2 weeks, and come back and we can talk about it again.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, Neil. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Bye-bye.
1F, we're going to wait till April 11th, and the chair of CZM is going to come.
Wait till when?
April 11th. That's our next board meeting.
In deference to that, can we start that as number one?
Yeah,
since-
I'll do what I always do. When somebody comes, that's a volunteer, I put them on top of the list.
Okay, well, I'm just, okay.
Unless I don't see them and I don't know, but if I know, I do that. Transfer station roof project, we're waiting. Jerry, what are we waiting on for that?
Waiting to do it in-house, so I just haven't had time to do it.
We can do the whole project in-house?
Yep, whole project.
What kind of,
Yeah, go ahead.
what kind of roof is that, Jerry?
It's a typical pole barn type of structure, Lou.
Will it support solar panels?
Maybe, I'm not sure about the rating. I don't know if it will. I can check to see if it would, but it's basically a simple pole barn.
I'm hopeful that's something we can start doing on a regular basis.
Uh-huh. I agree. I think the solar array is the way to go.
Pardon me. Item 1H, adult moratorium for properties in the C1 and C2 zoning districts that are located in a federally mapped floodplain. I sent this a long time ago, and something I want the board to consider. How's it going?
Yeah.
I'll just read what I wrote. Dear all, this was to everybody. Development in the flood zone is a topic of great concern to many folks who live in the village for obvious reasons. The only real opportunities left to develop substantial housing in the flood zone are in the C1 or C2 commercial districts with the infill housing provision of our zoning codes. Eliminating infill housing in the flood zone, which are easily identifiable, would keep the population that is threatened by flooding from growing, lessening the burden on village emergency services and hopefully easing traffic congestion and strain upon already stressed infrastructure in our most densely populated areas. I'm proposing a moratorium on any new applications in this area for housing until we can study the issue and decide whether to amend the law accordingly. I want the discussion to center on this one issue and not run far afield like the discussions for PLLC a few years back, which became overly complicated and had unintended consequences. In addition, a discussion of a moratorium on infill housing in the C1, in the flood zones in C1 and C2 district to the next, I'm adding this in addition. Hopefully we can work with bigger on this issue. Just for folks who are not up to date on our code that much, and why would you be if you're watching it from home? The C1 and the C2 are the commercial districts. The C2 is mostly here on Mamaroneck Avenue and a little bit up the road a bit. In Washingtonville, I believe all of the commercial district that is abutting Mamaroneck Avenue is zoned C1 or C2. A lot of that has been developed residential already, but there is a lot that has not been developed residential. Now, there are a couple of things. Every time we build a residential building, we're taking away opportunities for regular commercial businesses to have access to our downtown. And in my view, we are putting people in harm's way. And although we have the Army Corps plan coming up, you know, there is always going to be, you know, a potential for flooding in those areas. And what we've done over the years is fit more people into an area that we know is going to flood. And we've built both all our affordable opportunities down there, and we have built more high-end opportunities down there. Now, I think that adding more people into an area that is dangerous to begin with is not good planning. We have a couple of projects underway now in consideration by the land use boards. I'm not talking about affecting them because I don't believe in having somebody get 80, 90% down the road and then pulling a rug out from under them. I just don't think that's fair. But this would be a moratorium on developing any more in those flood zones until we have a chance to consider changing the law. At the end of the day, we might change our minds and think that isn't the way to go, to change the law. But the moratorium would allow us the chance to take our time, consider what is best for the flood zone, and whether or not we wish to allow more residential development in an area that's actually zoned commercial and not residential. The whole idea of infill housing was to take parts of land that were not even, that were, oddly shaped, that were zoned commercial, and to give those people some other opportunity to use their land. What it has become almost exclusively is a way to create more housing. And that wasn't the sole purpose of it. The purpose of it was, to have the opportunity, but not have it to be the only opportunity. And that's what's happened in the past 40 years since infill housing was allowed in the Village of Mamaroneck. In a lot of communities, you can't build housing in the commercial zone. It's commercial. We've allowed it in some ways successfully, and in some ways, I think we've overused it. And after September 1st, the idea of increasing density in an area that, quite frankly, we could not provide emergency services to during the height of the storm. One of the most stressful parts about being mayor in these past 4 years was when people were calling me on the night of September 1st and saying, I'm stuck on my second floor. My whole first floor is inundated. When are you coming to get me? And having to tell them that we don't have the capacity to come to get you, and that, just keep going up higher in your house, and, we'll get you as soon as we can get you. And, then truly praying that they would be there in the morning. And thankfully they all were, but it was a stressful night. And I just, I don't want to put more of our residents in that situation. We've built in areas where we can't, a whole significant part of this community, we can't provide emergency services to during a large flood event. And that is very scary. So that was my thinking on this. I would like to have the village attorney draft moratorium law if I have support from the board. But I think this is a very important issue. We obviously don't have to have the answers to what the moratorium study would be, but I want to give us a breather so that we can study this issue without a rush by developers to build on all the land before we've had a chance to examine what's best for our community. So that was a mouthful, and I'm sorry it took so long. But that's how I feel on this.
I don't disagree, and I also, the planning board had asked for this in September as well. But I think, one of the problems with the previous moratorium was we didn't have a good scope. So I think we have to be very fast at figuring out what our scope is going to be, because we don't want to have to keep extending and extending. And obviously it can apply to people who are already in the process. That's not legal. I mean, it's not the right thing to do, but it's also not defensible.
Well, it's legal until they get a building permit. You can do it until.
No, I'm talking about your reference that it wouldn't apply to people. Well, I think if they're in the process, you really can't stop them from applying for their permit.
No, you can, but if you have a moratorium, they can't get a permit. Mr. Sposino?
Do you want me to answer that in a public session? Yeah, the answer is you can stop them until they get to the point of substantial construction, at which point they have a vested right to continue under whatever approval they're operating under.
Okay, I did not know that. Lou?
A moratorium doesn't sit well with me, and the reason it doesn't is because it seems like paralysis. It seems like we don't know what to do, so we don't want to do anything because we're afraid to do anything. And I'm familiar with the area there. I think that area, parts of that commercial zone have changed and are de facto residential now already. And some of those abandoned former commercial buildings are just sitting there contributing to the flood problem. So if a developer wanted to knock them down and build something that's more flood resilient and less problematic in causing runoff, then why wouldn't we let them do that? Why do we insist on having abandoned buildings just sitting there occupying space? I mean, if somebody wants to deal with some of those buildings on Van Rest, for instance, well, God bless them. Let them do it. I mean, that's where I live, and I don't like looking at abandoned buildings. And I understand if it floods, the ambulance isn't coming to get me, but those buildings will be high enough not to get flooded. So I don't like it, Tom. I don't.
Okay, we're allowed to disagree. But my concern is without a moratorium, people are going to rush to build if they know we're considering it. That
I wish they would.
Well,
Yeah.
We disagree on this.
Okay.
Is there support for asking the village attorney to draw up a moratorium law?
So, Bob, how would, is 6 months enough time? I mean, obviously,
Just let me just address something Nora said before, because I got off track. The study which I would want to see is just removing infill housing in the C1 and C2 zone in areas that are in the flood zone. That is the scope that I would consider. It's a narrow scope.
so I think a narrow scope is a good way to define it. And I also think that if you're going to do a moratorium or make any kind of a land use change, it's always better to have it be part of your comprehensive plan. And as we're wrapping up the comprehensive plan now, that's why that's why I think we would link those two together, because it's, we're using the moratorium as a planning tool for how we deal with the areas, or for one aspect of how we deal with the areas that flood. So I think because we're finishing up the comp plan and because we have a consultant that we've worked with on a moratorium before, so, I think we'd all work together pretty quickly and efficiently. I think that will make sure that the moratorium fits in with the community's goals. I think it's great that both of them are on the agenda the same day.
Okay, but my question is, are you supportive of the village attorney drawing up a moratorium law?
Yeah, provided that we, work. I mean, we have to get a consultant to do the.
Of course, yes. I mean,
Provided we link it to our comp plan, I think it's a really good idea. Not in the vacuum is what I'm saying.
okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I
Victor?
like that.
Dan, Victor had his hand up. We'll get to you. Go ahead, Victor.
I follow Lou's idea that there could be things we could be doing now, and if we invite the planning board that is dealing with these issues to tell us what quick change they need to make to tackle some of these changes. Maybe we don't need a moratorium. Maybe the answers are right there and we could tackle them. So I would go along that the moratorium, which I'm also afraid if it doesn't have a very, very specific proposal, because I'm a little confused because, and it's not a question because we don't want to invite to the dialogue, but on the one hand, the mayor is saying we need to do this to study, and then you say to do this in this area. But in the middle, there's some million of possibility. We'd have to be very, very narrow. And I don't see that happening now. So I'm not in favor of just drafting a law, because then we'll have to scope it. I don't think how we could kind of rush into that. I'm more in line with what Lou and Nora has just said, without
Nora's
drafting a
in
law.
favor of the moratorium.
Okay, well, then I wrap it up saying no, I'm not.
Okay, Natchez?
Yeah, Nora, I'm curious. I don't understand how we can do a moratorium which will go on for, 6 months, and also have it included in the comprehensive plan unless we delay the comprehensive plan.
So,
And that's the oxymoron that I'm struggling with,
Well-
suggesting.
I think so. I think if we're going to have a moratorium, as we know, last time we didn't give ourselves enough time. We had to extend it. We almost had to, I think, did we extend it twice? I think we did extend it twice. Like had to do an extra month at the end because we didn't have a scope. This is a pretty narrow scope. I think we can get that portion of it done. And if, we don't want the moratorium, we don't want the comp plan to go on for more than, Neil said 4 months minimum if we were going to do the larger scope. We're reducing the scope of the comp plan. So if we can get the comp plan done, we can get this done as part of the comprehensive plan. I mean, we have to do a planning study anyway to do this. Then we might be able to solve the solution faster. I understand the planning board's request that we kind of, hold on and don't let people start applying until we've figured this out. And I understand Tom's interest in doing that. And, Ida was now 6-7 months ago, and we haven't changed anything on the ground. So
I just, thank you, Nora, and I agree with you. I just want to be clear about something. The scope that I'm talking about is very narrow and very defined, and it's right there. It's removing the infill housing provision in the flood zone in the C1 and C2 district, if there is flood zones in the C2 district. And that is it. That is the scope that I hope to study. And if the study comes out that would be a foolish idea, then I'll accept that. But that is the scope of the study. I don't want this to this is what happened with PLLC. We didn't think narrowly, and it became a little more complicated. So I just want to be clear about that that would be the scope. And the planning board asked for a moratorium. The flood committee asked for a moratorium. I was skeptical at first, but then the more I thought about it, the more it made sense to me. Victor, I saw your hand up.
Yes, Mayor, I think what I understand from what you're explaining is you more like rezoning. You know what you want, and then you want to study it. But you're really moving this into a rezoning. You want to already rezone, eliminate the infill housing from this area. That's changing the code.
I understand that, Victor.
So then why do you need a moratorium?
moratorium?
So what you're suggesting is something different.
No, Victor, I don't understand what the confusion is.
That you already have the conclusion where you would want to end.
That's the premise I want investigated. If the investigation turns out that my premise is wrong, then I'm willing to abandon my premise. But all of these moratoriums happen with the premise. They happen with, hey, there's a problem. How do you propose on addressing the problem? That's my proposal, right? If my proposal turns out to be wrong, I'm willing to admit that I was wrong. But it's the moratorium protects us while we do the study. And but this is like, proving a theorem, right? Somebody comes up with a theorem, and then they work out the proof, and sometimes that proof doesn't work out, and you got to go back to the drawing board. I'm more than willing to, work on the theory, and if it doesn't work out, to say it doesn't work out. But I think that the goal of not putting people in harm's way and of moving this village to be more resilient is the goal I'm looking for. Trustee Natchez, you had your hand up.
Yeah, what would you envision being studied we hire somebody, what would you envision their scope to be? Not just studying it, but specifically what would we be looking for?
What I believe they would specifically be looking for are the benefits and the detriments to the community of removing infill housing in a flood zone. That would be it. How would it benefit the community? How would it hurt the community? Would the benefits outweigh the detriments? I think that that's basically the goal of every study. This is a rocket science.
Well, it seems to be the answer to that depends on what's there now. I mean, I wrote down here, you want to build something? If it helps, yes. If it doesn't help, no. Now, if it's an empty lot, I think we leave it alone until we figured out our new zoning laws and all that. But if it's an abandoned building and you're going to tear it down, well, yeah, let them do that.
But Lou, you can't differentiate when you're doing zoning. You can't say, okay, I'm gonna not let Mr. Jones build because he has an empty lot, and I'm gonna let Mr. Smith build because he has old buildings. When you're trying to do zonings, you have to look at the whole zone in its entirety and see what benefits the community. Trustee Natchez.
I don't have an objection to the attorney drafting a proposed moratorium, but I would want to see a proposal from a consultant before adopting it. So, of what would be studied so that we can determine whether this makes sense or not, Tom. I think the concept, let me just finish, Tom. I am talking. I would appreciate the courtesy of just being able to.
Okay. I just wanted clarification on something you said.
Okay. What I'm looking for is just saying we're going to study it. I would like to see a very specific proposal from somebody who would undertake the study as to what they think they can do and what they can't do.
Okay, that's better. That I understand better.
Okay, and that's what I'm trying to get to. So I don't. But I want them coupled together. So when it comes before us, we have what the moratorium be and what would be done in a timetable so that we have something more solid to proceed on.
That's not a bad point. Is Neil on?
Yes, that's why, Neil's on the call. And I think if we had, been continuing, if we hadn't stopped our comp plan or we had resumed shortly after Ida, some of these issues would have been resolved in the work Neil would be doing. So I think, I think everybody's on the same page and we just need to figure out what the studies are. And I think if we hadn't done all the work we did on the previous moratorium, we wouldn't really remember the history of the infill housing and, why it was introduced. And, its legacy hasn't been great for the village. So I think we're on the right path to fixing that.
Okay.
Thanks. I'm glad Neil's back.
Neil, are you on?
Yeah, no, I remember that you're going to talk about the moratorium, so I hopped back on. I just have my question goes along with Trustee Natchez's question or suggestion to focus in, because having done the moratorium study, the prior one, we covered a lot of ground, traffic, and we covered a lot of aspects of things. And I guess it sounds to me possibly, you would need, is the one thing you want to look at. Like, for example, Beacon did a moratorium a few years ago and they focused on one thing. Their concern was water supply. So did a study on water supply and whether the new development can handle, is going to have a negative effect on water supply or if there's enough water. And that was the very specific scope. I think the study was probably quite large, but it was a very specific scope. Now, in this case, is it some sort of kind of looking at flood modeling? Like, what is the likelihood of floods in some of these areas? And whether that would put buildings
Wait,
at risk.
we know the likelihood of floods. You know,
Okay, well-
that's not what I'm after. Yeah, and you could refer to the Army Corps of Engineers study for that information. What I'm talking about is what with the action of removing the infill housing from flood zones in the commercial district, C1 and C2. I'm sure you're aware of the infill housing provision that we have.
Definitely.
What would be the detriments and what would be the benefits? And, would it be, would it be worth our while, both from a public safety standpoint? What would be the trade-off in losing those properties as infill housing? Does that make sense, Neil?
Yeah, so it sounds like, so one of the factors for sure, for example, losing properties in the infill, one could look at, what is the impact on, tax revenue, or what is the impact on
potential
affordable housing,
revenue, right? Because
potential, right?
yeah. And the costs associated with having housing.
Got it. Which would be potential public safety costs of that sort of thing.
Or even just having housing and having to provide more municipal services for more residents.
Got it.
And some of that, because this area was part of the moratorium area, some of the area was part of the moratorium area. So there is going to be data from that already.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a lot of data from 2019 or 2018. We looked at parcel by parcel, what are the potential build outs, and I wonder if using that, that data could be reused or need to be updated.
I hate to be a stickler for time, but we have other things that we have to jump off of at 6:45. Do we have a consensus to have Neil give us a proposal on this, and to have Bob write up a potential moratorium so we could look at that? I think we had 3 people who agreed to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that and consider them.
Okay, thanks. All right, so
At the
Neil,
same
I'm sorry.
One question, at the same time? Is that,
Yeah,
don't
at the
you
same
need the
time.
first scope before we give
Just
it
do them both at the
the
same
board,
time.
if they want to move this, because I'm really reluctant, because really the other, without a very clear built-in system to restrict extending this, very, very focused, I'm very reluctant to do this. So how I really question, how can you move the 2 things at the same time without, because one of the things, and Bob can confirm, is you really have to justify, you have to explain why you're doing it, and have a time that relates to what you're studying. So I think you're heading ahead of, without heading, but you don't let me finish, without getting the piece from Mr. Desai. I don't know how you can move to the second at the same time.
Well, we could have the law ready, and we could decide as a board whether to move it in 2 weeks. It'll just be on the agenda. And you can make these arguments again in 2 weeks. But if the majority of the board wants to do it, then we can do it. We're not making a decision to put it on a regular session. This is for the work session in 2 weeks. And truthfully, many communities do studies in 6 months. Many communities. It's a matter of staying focused on the task in front of us and not being led afield. So with that being said, Neil, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Thanks.
We'll see you in 2 weeks. We have a lot of questions for you soon. Okay, there's one item that we talked about that was on for the regular meeting. I explained why it had to be on for the regular meeting. This has to do with the Save the Sound potential, legal quandary. This is the Arcadis proposal with completion of CMAR in addition to phase 1 sewer rehabilitation project. This will be an advice of council. Okay, that's advice. I'm sorry, I didn't read the whole thing. But it's on-
Mayor, I think it's going to be a executive session item.
It's advice of council.
Let me see that.
Okay.
In any case, let me say I'm recused in this matter, and I will do so when we enter. I'll stay out of it.
You know what, Victor? We'll do it last when we go to executive session, so that you can just pop off then. Fair enough?
All right. Yep. Fair enough.
Except Mayor, to the extent that the board wants to discuss the proposal, but not the legal issues, you may want to do that in the work session so that you can advance it to the regular session tonight.
Thank you, Bob. Good point.
I do have a couple of questions about it. So
Go
I'm,
ahead.
Before you start, Nora, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
oh, you have to,
the way it was explained, it's connected to save the sound. So if there's a chain of, if that's what's forcing this, and it's really unfortunate, in 5 years recusing on this, it doesn't, so I would need to continue recusing if it's tied to, but I don't know, because I haven't gone into the legal session. I see the manager saying it is tied.
All right, we're wasting time.
So then I'm getting out of this at this minute.
Don't get out. We're not going to do it. We're going to go into executive session. We'll do it at the end because it's time to go into executive session anyway.
but then how do we discuss it in public if we want to put it on the agenda?
Yeah. If you give me.
How about this? Can we just agree to put it on the regular agenda?
Yeah, we could just move that it's going to be on a regular agenda in the work session, in the executive advice of council.
Anyway.
That's better.
It's on there anyway.
Okay.
All the backup is there.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to go through these one at a time. I'm going to make the motion if somebody was second. Village of Mamaroneck versus the seller. It is anticipated that a motion will be offered to enter into executive session pursuant to 105(1)D of the Public Safety Officers Law to discuss pending litigation. I am making that motion.
Second.
Okay, Lou second. Call it, Sally.
Trustee Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Tefor.
Yes.
Oh, you're recused on this one, though, I think.
Yeah.
Victor.
Acela?
Take a pass on this one.
This is how.
Are you talking about Acela?
Yes,
Not recused.
Oh,
Acela?
sorry.
The next
No
one.
problem.
and Mayor Murphy.
Hi. Save the Sound versus Village of Mamaroneck. It is anticipated that a motion will be offered to enter into executive session pursuant to 105(1)D of the New York State Public Officers Law to discuss matters of pending litigation.
Second. Oh, I so moved. Well,
All right, I'll second. Go ahead, Sally.
Trustee Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
yes.
Tefor, you are recused from this as well, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Update on the Pba negotiations. It is anticipated that a motion, I'm making a motion that the Pba will be offered to enter into executive session pursuant to 105(1)E of the New York Public Officers Law for update on Pba negotiations. I made the motion.
Second.
Trustee Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Tefor,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Item D, Village Manager Performance Review of 2021. It is anticipated that a motion will be offered to enter into executive session pursuant to 105(1)F of the New York State Public Officers Law. I make that motion.
Second.
Trustee Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Tefor,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Village Manager EEOC complaint against Board of Trustees. It is anticipated that a motion will be offered to enter into executive session pursuant to 105(1)D of the New York Public Officers Law. I make that motion.
Second.
Trustee Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Hold on. Dan, are we going to go through this again? And not have a discussion that this board needs to have?
The motion was to go into executive session. I'm voting yes, the board can go into executive session.
No, are you not recusing yourself? That's the question, Dan.
When we get to executive session, I'll give you the answer.
You know, here's the problem with not changing the ethics law. Is that I'm afraid to even refer this because it's going to cost us $100 and something thousand for his attorney. But this is, call the roll.
Trustee Lucas,
Yes.
Tefor,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy,
No, because trustee Natchez will recuse himself. All right, let's go into executive session.
You don't know that, Tom, but that's fine.
You don't vote on doing something where you're recusing yourself.
There's also one other matter that is, that should be an executive session. Adam sent us a draft for comment on the Goldstein matter.
Adam's not here, and we don't put things on executive session anymore right at the meeting. If you want to put something on executive session, send it in. He asked for comment and nobody commented. I'll see you in executive session.